Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge YouTube channel and to stage 4, the final stage of Tour de la Provence 2021. Ivan Sosa leading GC 19 seconds ahead of teammate Egan Bernal, who's only 2 seconds ahead of Julian Alaphilippe in third. The stage from Avignon to Salon de Provence, 162.5 Ks, and not a particularly difficult stage. Unless there was significant wind or a really strong rider like Alaphilippe or Cavagna tried something mad on one of the last final rises, this was going to come down to a bunch sprint. But still, it was going to be interesting to see how Ivan Sosa went defending the leader's jersey on a flat stage. A bit of a dreary day in Provence. There's also this bridge, doesn't go to anywhere. Can someone please explain what's going on there? And a fairly strong break went up the road actually. Andreas Leknesund, the Norwegian on DSM, he's definitely one to watch out for. Louis Marbonnet, Tony Galopin, Jérémy Leveux. So pretty strong riders. Galopin moving over Ajoua Citroën this year. Demar, he's missed out on the first 2 stages. Surely he'd be getting a top result in this stage, which if it played out normally was going to be a bunch sprint. Tough times in life. I think that's Clément David, second wheel behind Eddie Dunbar, probably the smallest man he's ever had to draft at the front of the peloton. Eddie Dunbar, the Irishman, doing work, chasing down this breakaway. With 24.7 Ks to go, the gap to the break was 120, so they had it in hand and they just kept it at about 1 minute up until the last 5 or so kilometers so that they didn't chase it down too early. Cavagna, how many times have we seen this over the last 3 days? Cavagna at the front of the peloton chasing, and that you can see they had them well within their sights with 3.4 Ks to go, 10 8-second gap, and then they eventually caught them with about 2 kilometers. And this is quite a tricky last 2 kilometers. Lots of 90-degree turns into the town, so positioning is very important. You've got to be in good position with 800 meters to go. Julian Alaphilippe's second wheel behind Bahrain victorious lead-out man. You can see on the left-hand side Ballerini being brought up, I think, by Stibar. Ballerini's in that red, white and blue jersey. Coquard and Bauhaus were fighting for his wheel. Coquard and Bauhaus were fighting for position this entire sprint. Julian Alaphilippe starts to launch his lead out with 800 meters to go. Stibar's second wheel getting to this left-hand corner, very important to be in good position, which Ballerini is. Third wheel, Bouhanni on his wheel, black helmet. I know the Arkea Samsic kit looks very similar to Bahrain Victoria. It's going to make my life very difficult this season. That's Bauhaus on Bouhanni's wheel with Coquard to their left in the B&B kit. You can see Alaphilippe swings wide. He signals there's a left-hand corner coming up, goes wide, apex, wide. Stibar right on his wheel, overlapping to the right. You see Stibar took that corner slightly better than Ballerini actually, and we've got another left-hand corner, which, so being in position, and what Alaphilippe did was just outstanding for the quick-step lead-out, starting from 800 and ensuring that Stibar only had to kick with about 400, 350 meters to go. Bouhanni's on Ballerini's wheel right now. Stibar kicks with about 350 and Ballerini gets launched, or launches his sprint rather, with about 150, 130 meters to go to the left-hand side of Stibar. He's got Bauhaus going to his right the long way around, Bouhanni trying to come up on his inside on the left-hand side, but Bauhaus overpowers the both of them, the Bahrain victorious rider. And you can see in the overhead that, yeah, Quickstep couldn't have done a better job for Ballerini in this sprint, giving him an option on the right-hand side of the road if you wanted to go up Stibar's right or left, and you only had to sprint for about 120, 130 meters. I don't think there was too much wind. Bauhaus goes the long way around Stibar on the right-hand side. And I want to talk about this, why Bouhanni's mad, the title of this video. Does Bouhanni have any right to be mad? Is Ballerini in the right? Did Ballerini deviate? We'll have a closer look at it in a second. You can see that Bouhanni was pretty mad and he thought that Ballerini had deviated to the left. Ivan Sosa did finish the stage first on GC. He didn't lose any time, but he was looking shell-shocked after that crazy run into the town. He looks like he didn't want to do that ever again. But let's talk about Bouhanni coming up on the inside here, whether he has any right to be mad with Ballerini and why this is such a difficult one to call either way. So let's start when Ballerini launches his sprint. So I'm going to be pretty nice to Ballerini and say he's launched his sprint a couple of seconds after he's come out of the wheel of Stibar. And remember, the rule is you cannot deviate or change your lane and endanger another rider when after you have launched your sprint. And then his lane has to be parallel to the barriers. How wide that lane is, no one knows because the rules don't say. It's a problem in the rules themselves. So that's where he started his sprint as a benchmark. And then when Bouhanni tries to come around him, this is where Ballerini is basically finishing his sprint, and Ballerini doesn't move from this lane. And you can see on the left-hand side of Ballerini, there's plenty of space for Bouhanni to go through, 2 bike rider widths. And I think that's why Bouhanni's trying to shoot that gap. And I initially thought Ballerini had deviated quite a lot, but you can see it's actually the barriers squeezing in on Bouhanni right here, you can see the barriers start to curve into Bouhanni. That lessens that space. Now, yes, I do think Ballerini deviated slightly to the left after launching his sprint, but it has to be within some sort of margin of error. They're still sprinting at 65 k's an hour plus. And I also understand why Bouhanni is frustrated. Ballerini maybe moved over to the left a little bit, but from his perspective, he's shooting a gap which was there, and then it wasn't there, so he'd think, oh, this guy's obviously closed the door on me. And even in real time, it's a bit of an optical illusion because the space is getting smaller, so we think Ballerini's moving over, but I don't think he did too much. Another reason Bouhanni might be frustrated is because he lost the Saudi Tour GC after Bauhaus, also in this sprint, who won this sprint, definitely deviated and should have been DQ'd on the last stage of Saudi Tour last year in 2020. Let's also take a look at Bauhaus' positioning in the last 700 meters and how strong he was with multiple kicks. You can see him here on Bouhanni's wheel. We mentioned this before, had this overhead shot with Ballerini in front of Bouhanni. They got this left-hand corner, and Coquard kind of comes in on Bauhaus, meaning that Bauhaus loses the wheel of Bouhanni. He has to go slower through this corner, loses Coquard's wheel a little bit, still getting a draft in the bunch largely, but he has to kick pretty hard here to get back up to Coquard's wheel, and I think that's Moschetti to the left of Coquard. Bauhaus is then going to try and come around Bouhanni. They all want to get on Ballerini's wheel, right? Because Ballerini's getting the perfect lead out. And you can't see this too well from front on, but this is Bauhaus right now sprinting around Coquard to get to Bouhanni's wheel, and Bouhanni is on Ballerini's wheel. So really impressive from Bauhaus. 2 kicks before his final sprint to get into good position, and then able to kick again to the right hand side with about 120 meters to go. And he didn't have as good a sit as Bouhanni, Bouhanni being on Ballerini's wheel. Bauhaus pretty much had to do it all himself. So impressive from the German getting this sprint. Bahrain victorious in name indeed. But here's the stage results. Bauhaus first, Ballerini second, Bouhanni third, Moschetti fourth, Degenkolb fifth, and Coquard sixth. Matthew Walls was consistently up there in the sprints for Bora in stages 1 and 4, but I think he could benefit from a slightly better lead-out training. We might see what he's really able to do. And Sosa takes the general classification of the 2021 Tour de la Provence ahead of Julian Alaphilippe, who beats Bernal by 1 second into second place. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I don't think it was covered by the live images. I think Julian Alaphilippe took a 3-second bonus at the first intermediate sprint to move from third to second on GC. And what a race it's been. 4 stages in February in Provence, a 2-pro race. Look at who we've got on the podium. Alaphilippe, the world champ, Bernal, the Tour de France winner in 2019, and the young Colombian climbing sensation, Ivan Sosa, winning the GC. An absolutely stacked field, some really exciting stages. And I hope you enjoyed these 4 highlight videos. I really enjoyed making them. The feedback has been really good. If you want to support the channel, there's obviously channel membership, we've got the Discord, etc. You can join that through the link below. Obviously check out the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast. We've got the UAE preview dropping tonight. People are very excited to hear that one, about how we think he or she is going to go at UAE. But otherwise, hope you're well, and the next highlights will be Paris-Nice in about a month. Ciao.